Gentlemen, welcome to the Front Row Dads podcast. I'm your host, John Vroman, and this is the show for family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. And today, we're shaking things up. This is a conversation that I had with my friend Hal, except I was being interviewed for his podcast. And if you haven't checked it out, it's the Achieve Your Goals podcast with Hal Elrod. Now, if you don't know who Hal Elrod is, he wrote a book called The Miracle Morning. Sold millions of copies, best-selling book all over the world. There's a movie about it, which you can find, I believe it's on Amazon, The Miracle Morning movie. Anyway, Hal and I have been best friends for 20 years. Our kids go to the same school together, and I just love my conversations with Hal. We made it a point that every year around Father's Day, we have a conversation to talk about everything we learned over the last 12 months, all the things that are working with inside the Front Row Dad community, which is now approaching 300 members from 15 different countries. And we've been having these conversations now intentionally for the past 6 years. I think I've been on his podcast and he's been on mine for the last 4 years in a row. And on June 15th, we are hosting a free webinar. We do this once a year, only one time per year. We host a webinar and we share the best strategies that we have witnessed and experienced ourselves over the last 12 months. That is a free webinar. It's available to anybody listening on this show. Hal is dropping this conversation on his podcast. And if you want to come join us, you can just go to frontrowdads.com/Hal, throw your email in there and we'll get you the details. Again, it's totally free. It's 1 hour. We're going to be moving fast, giving you big content, big ideas, actionable strategies. And then we're going to open up at the end for a little Q&A. So if you want to ask us questions directly, we'll give you our best insights, resources we might be able to point you to help you out. So again, that's June 15th. Go to frontrowdads.com/Hal to register. We're going to talk about things like investing the right amount of time with your family. When you're with your family, how do you focus on your family? How about emotional intelligence? How do we keep our cool, not get angry, not raise our voices? What mindset do we bring to all the conversations? Are we fully engaged when we are there? And how do we truly connect when maybe you have different interests than your kids? You're a sports guy, they're into theater, something like that. How do you make a connection so that you can have the biggest impact possible and be the best dad that you can be? We're talking not only parenting, but we think a crucial element to being a great parent is also being in a great partnership, a great relationship, a great marriage. And so we're going to talk about what we have learned in that space. We talk about all sorts of things in this conversation, like screen time, and then we'll expand on these in a more structured format during the webinar. But I hope you enjoyed this conversation today with Hal. Again, this was recorded for his podcast. He was running the interview. We're both sharing strategies and stories, but we wanted to release it here to the Front Row Dad community as well. So not only can you connect with and learn from Hal, but you can get yourself situated to join us on June 15th for the free webinar. Go to frontrowdads.com/Hal and you can get signed up for that. Guys, there's so many great things going on inside Front Row Dads. If you are a member, I want to thank you for your influence and your ideas. And if you are somebody who just found this show, and we want to help you to win at home as much as you might be winning at work. But what we don't want is for you to get to the end of your life, look back and say, gosh, I wish I would have known that earlier so I could have made a bigger difference within my family. That's why this community exists. Again, we are family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. Again, guys, thanks for listening in. I'm not going into some big intro here for Hal because many of you already know Hal's a celebrity around the world. And if you want to go learn about him, just go look up Hal Elrod. You can get his whole bio, but just know that he is truly a family man first. He walks that talk. I see him do it day in and day out. He'll talk about how he keeps that alignment and that priority straight with some of the strategies he shares during this interview. But his professional accomplishments are insane. But to me, the cool thing that makes him the best is how he shows up for his family. Enjoy this podcast, guys, and I hope to see you on the webinar June 15th. Get signed up, frontrowdads.com/Hal.
All right, Johnny, it's official. People are listening. How you doing?
Oh, well, then in that case, fantastic.
Yeah, me too. It's a great day to be alive.
Yeah.
Hey, man, we just hung out. What is today? Today's Tuesday, and I saw you on Saturday at my house because our kids were camping in my backyard. And then I saw you Sunday at a fellow Front Row Dad's house, Ryan Levesque's house. And now 2 days later, man, we get a lot of time together. In case people don't know, like we're legit friends.
And dude, you're coming over tonight.
Oh yeah, and I'm coming sauna and cold plunge tonight.
It's going to be great. It's going
Wow,
to be
that's a lot. That's like, that might be a little bit too much of each other. I don't know.
I don't think I haven't been in the same space with you and Nick Conadera, who, for anybody who doesn't know, was a driver in your film, The Miracle Morning.
He was the director
documentary.
of the Miracle Morning documentary. Yeah.
But I haven't hung out with both of you guys in a while. So I saw Nick not so long ago, and I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be good.
Yeah, we might need a break after this, though. It's a lot of John and Hal time. It's a lot of John.
The only thing on my calendar says ignore Hal.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so I want to answer a question today. Today, the main focus that I want us to answer is, how can we win? How can everybody listening win in marriage or relationships, right? Anything we share that applies to a marriage is probably going to apply to a relationship with a boyfriend, a girlfriend, etc. But how do we win in marriage? How can we all win in marriage? And how can we all win in parenting? And of course, you can bucket those two as family, right? How do we win with family? How do we thrive with family? And I think that, and I'll riff here for a minute and then open it up. But I think that it's so important now. I mean, it's always been important, but our world is pretty unstable. And the more stable we can have our family life, I think the better. And, our friend Mike McCarthy, who is the co-author of The Miracle Morning for Parents and Families, he gave a speech on The Miracle Morning for Parents and Families at our school the other day. And, he talked about that his mission now in life is to bring any help that he can to families so that they can be more connected, so that they can thrive, so that kids feel loved and supported and nurtured and have structure and grow up to be, to be the difference makers for the next generation, right? And so being that, you founded Front Row Dads, and this is your whole world now is aligned with your highest priority, which is family. And I wanted to start there because I gave a speech a couple days ago at Aaron Amuchastegi's event. And Aaron's a friend of ours. What'd you say?
And a Front Row Dad, yeah.
And a Front Row Dad, there you go. Yeah, we're all intertwined here, man. We all take care of each other. But so I was at Aaron's event though, and I've done this before, but I asked the audience, I said, how many of you have kids? And like 90% of the hands went up. It was a group of real estate agents. And I said, awesome. I said, how many of you would say that your family is your number one priority, right? And every hand stayed up. And I said, awesome. And then the gut check, I said, how many of you, if I were to peek at your schedule, how many of you, keep your hands up if it would be totally obvious based on how you schedule your time that your family is your number one priority? And I think every single hand went down. And that, that's the wake-up call, is that it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to feel it. It's one thing to believe it. It's another thing to live it. And that's really what I want us to focus on today, which is, how do you live in alignment with your highest priority, which, being family. And what does that look like? Does that mean that you have to spend the majority of your time with family for them to be your highest priority, right? So there's some distinctions and nuances around this. But yeah, let's just start with, I'm going to ask you that question. How do you keep your family your top priority? Or are they your top priority? You tell me.
Yeah. So years ago, I said they were, but my calendar did not represent that. Today, I'm far more aligned with being a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family. And my calendar would show that. And there were some key things that over the years that I implemented that I've been able to keep my family a priority for me. And the first and most important one was not overloading the schedule. And that was like the biggest piece. I started not scheduling things on Mondays and Fridays. And there's reasons behind all this. And we could take a long journey down that rabbit hole of like all the nuances of how to make family a priority. But they are. And the thing is, when I look myself in the eyes now, when I look in the mirror, I am way more proud of the person I'm being today. And that is because of the examples and the models that I've been so close to over the last 6 years, watching men both fail and learn and then change, and also men and women who have all decided that, hey, I'm going to do these things and experiment and then share my best ideas with the community. And that's what we've seen in our group, even here in Austin, like with our closest friends, examples of success and failure, but constantly using those models as, what are we going to do differently tomorrow?
Well, what I love about it, actually, let me say this first. For those that don't know, one of the things that you did is you gave up a lucrative speaking career, right? For anybody listening, John was being paid $10,000 per speech to travel and speak. And then got to the point where you said, look, it's taking me away from my family. And you finally, like, you started turning down speeches. And I'm like, how could you turn down a $10,000 speech? That's crazy. And you just got, I think it's just this, it's a beautiful example of walking your talk, but also that, you once you're clear on your priorities, everything else is an easy yes or no. Yes. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly
our friend
right.
Pat Flynn said that, that he told me that. He's like, look, while my kids are young, they're not going to be young forever. If something takes me away from them, unless it's an absolute once in a lifetime opportunity, he said, it's a no. It's an easy no. Right. And I think that's one of the hardest, it's interesting. It's one of the hardest things is to say no to opportunities to earn money, opportunities to spend time with people, right? It's like, it's keeping your priorities in order. And this is coming clear as I'm saying it, but it's a matter of saying no to things that are really hard to say no to. Right?
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. That's the hardest thing. Cause for my entire life, and as I'm now 46 years old and getting more clear about this, I seek approval from other people. Sure. I don't want to let people down, and I want to be helpful. When I reached out to somebody in the past and they said yes and they helped me. And now when somebody reaches out to me, I want to repay the favor. I want to pay that forward. And so learning to say no to things that are important is very difficult. I mean, this happened recently, and I'm talking in the last 48 hours. Somebody said, hey, can we connect around this? I said, I would love to. And then I sent them my scheduling link, and their response back was, your scheduling link doesn't show an availability until late June. That's more than 6 weeks away from where we are right now. And then they said, here's my link. Maybe you can find something earlier. The John of 6 years ago would have absolutely clicked that link, not wanting to let that person down. And I would have booked something and made an exception. Like, I don't book any calls on Mondays or Fridays. I don't book anything before 10 or anything after 4. And I would have done it for sure, 100%. And this time I responded back and I said, hey man, well, I'd love to accommodate. That link is accurate. And that link is set up so that when it's filled, it's filled. That was so hard for me to say because I love that person and I don't want to let them down. I also know that I used to say this to my family constantly. Hey, it's just going to be tonight. Hey, it's just this weekend. I got to get through this project or this season. Hey, it's just this quarter that I've got to get through. And then the summer I'll be more free. Constantly would say that.
Yeah. And it's a way of being. It's a habitual way of showing up to opportunities, right? That doesn't go away. And I lived that life for year after year after year after year. It's just one more project. It's just another book. It's just right. And I had a really similar scheduling story. I told Tiffany, who's my assistant, I said, hey, I'm a no for the summer. If anybody asks for anything for the summer, I said, if it's a speech or something, you can run it by me. I'll see if Ursula and the kids can come with me. But the point is, it's funny because I made a commitment, commitment's a strong word, right? I said a while back, I don't want to work when the kids aren't in school. I want to set my schedule up and my life up. Not that I won't work at all, but I basically want to have time off every day that the kids have time off, right? Maybe I'll work from, in the morning, whatever. But I realize everybody listening, it's like some people, you have a job, you can't set your schedule this way. So some of what we talk about today will apply to you if you are an entrepreneur, and maybe less, certain things might not apply if you don't set your own schedule. But the point is, so I turned my scheduler off until after the summer, and same thing. I'm getting email after email going, hey dude, your first availability is mid-August. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm spending the summer with my family. It's funny, I had two people reach out. Actually, James Malinchik was one. He said, hey, will you be on the interview for my people? I said, sure, of course. And then I said, oh, it can't be till after the summer. So anyway, actually, I'm going to squeeze him in before the summer. But yeah, just aligning with what you're talking about, which is like, it's a relentless commitment to saying yes to your family and saying no to some other things. But we're going to have to talk about, okay, that's realistic for some people, for some situations, but not for others. And I want today, of course, to be applicable to every person listening, right? So let's get into some of the things that you're doing, that you're learning from the Front Row Dads group, that I'm learning being a part of the group as well. And just that you and I are practicing and sharing with each other. Here's one. Our kids the other night, I mentioned they all camped at our house. And our kids are part of this kind of homeschool co-op, and it was a knighting ceremony. It's part of the Waldorf tradition. They were knighted, and there was a crest that they created and a poem that was read. It was a really cool, like kind of like a rite of passage. And two things that came up that I wanted to talk about. One is our kids recently did community service. That was part of their school requirements. And you shared a story about Tiger and how you guys woke up early to pick up trash. Can you start by sharing that story?
Yeah. Tiger hadn't met his commitment. And I remember sitting on the couch with him the night before, talking to Tiger about the commitment and how Vromans have integrity. Vromans follow through with what they say they're going to do. And he was like, I don't think it's that big of a deal if I don't do it. I don't think I'll, get in that much trouble, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe there's other kids that didn't do it. And I talked about personal standards and how when we make commitments and what it means to follow through on your word. And sometimes those conversations go well. So other times I feel like I'm just preaching and it's not landing.
Yeah.
Tiger said to me at the end of the conversation, he said, would you wake me up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. because I want to go get a trash bag and walk down the street out in front of our house and pick up trash. And we did. We got up at 6. He finished. We went out. We were walking and talking. And I just kept saying, I'm so proud of you for making this decision. This was the tougher decision, but you followed through. You did it. And I could see that his chest was puffed out a little more on the way back. Like he felt good inside. And there are times when I see Tiger and I'm concerned. I see him kind of slouched over and his shoulders are rounded and his face just says, I'm lacking that, that challenge and that confidence and that progress that we feel as humans when we move forward with something. And, as a parent, the thing I would just invite everybody to consider, because this isn't prescriptive, like, hey, if you guys just do what I do, you'll be a great parent. Your kids will be amazing. But one of the things I've noticed within my own life and in other people's lives is that sometimes you need to push harder with your kids and balance that between I'm going to let natural consequences take control here. Because I could approach this one of two ways. Well, natural consequences would be like, Tiger, you get to make your own decisions. You're 12. And I just let him go to school and he would get in trouble. And that's one way of doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that. That could be very effective. The other way is to speak up as a parent and do it in a way that's in alignment with your best self. Communicate in a way that's the most powerful way how to communicate big ideas. But I think that our kids crave that. And I've heard this from other parents more than a handful of times, countless times, that in studies even, they've said that kids wished their parents pushed harder. Now, they might not have said that in the moment, but they enjoy when parents are guiding them. Now, again, there's a spectrum here and there are limits to all this, and it's all in context and it has to do with who's your kid and who are you and how much of all this is needed. But that's what we can often ask is what you're doing working. It's a question all parents should ask, even in your marriage, whether you're a man or a woman or wherever you are, is what I'm doing working. Am I happy with the result? And if not, you've got to experiment with it. In this case, it worked, man. And I was so happy.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I want to really emphasize what you just shared, which is that you said, Tiger, these are our family values, right? This is what we stand for, and our friend Mike McCarthy, he's the master of, creating family values and living those values and instilling those values with your kids. And like you said, it could have fallen on deaf ears, right? And in the moment, he might have even been, rolling his eyes or whatever. But then you got the fact that so much as parents, we don't see the fruit, right? When we plant the seed right away. But you planted it and then you got, hey, wake me up at 6 a.m. I'm going to live the Vroman family values tomorrow, right? Yeah. So great moment and just a lesson for all of us we've got to be clear on our values, our personal values, our family values, which are probably going to be, one and the same. And then we've got to, as you said, we've got to voice those values. We have to talk about them. And, even if in the moment your kids, like my daughter we call her, she's like the master eye roller. Right. Might roll their eyes, but then when rubber meets the road, right, when it's game time, like you actually see that those values have been embedded in their subconscious and then they rise to the surface. Other thing you and I talked about the other day when you were here is that you and I are not getting phones for our kids, at least not anytime soon. And we're some of the only parents in our community. And that's been a challenge, right? So every day, My daughter comes home and goes, guess who got a phone today? This friend, right? And then, oh, guess who had their 13th birthday today and got a phone? This friend, right? And I'm like, that's, I feel sorry for, I usually will make jokes or something like, poor them. Like, that sucks. They're going to be addicted to a phone now. And she's like, no, I want a phone. And she always says, Dad, I just want like an iPhone 8, like an old iPhone. I'm like, that doesn't change what it does to your ever evolving brain, sweetheart. So for me, what was big, I read this book, Glow Kids. I've talked about it on this podcast. The premise of it is that phones are addictive. They're designed to be addictive. And as a child's brain is developing, they're bad enough for adults, but as a child's brain is developing, it literally is shaping the way their brain develops so that they develop addictive tendencies and behavior that can then impact any or every area of their life. More likely to be addicted to drugs or alcohol or television or pornography or you name it, right? So that's some of my I'm like, dude, I'm going to hold off on this as long as humanly possible. What are your thoughts on getting Tiger a phone, why you're not doing it, when, if ever, you'll do it? What are your thoughts?
We have the same conversation. And I think it's important to identify that the phone itself, a smaller screened device, it can be put into two categories. One, that phone could be disabled in almost every way with no apps, no internet, but it could be used to call in case of emergencies, right? Which I think can be an easy win at home, especially if you don't have landlines.
Yeah.
That when you're out, you've got a 12 or 13-year-old and they have a way to call for help or call you at home. I think that's appropriate, right? So I don't want to, when I say no phone or you're not able to have anything, I think that there are small nuances to this. Yeah. What I'm talking about, and I think where you and I both land, are unlimited access to the internet, to the world, to apps, to how much time we can spend on that device. It's mine. I now control where I go, what I do, etc. I can text or talk to my friends for infinite amounts of times. And again, there's always a scale, right? There's always a far end over here and a far end over here. And I'm trying to land in a place where, look, if Tiger needs to watch YouTube to learn something for school, then couple rules that work for us. And we have computers and iPads and phones in the house that he could have access to. One is not in your room, not alone is one of our rules, right? So he never goes to bed with any device in his room, and it's not unlimited access in your room to any device. It's usually public or the doors open is one piece of the puzzle. Second is limiting exposure to almost anything. So you can have too much of a good thing, and just because it's a documentary there are limits to all these things. And what I would say is this, whether it's Tiger or Ocean, one of the things that I've noticed is that when they're exposed to screens on almost any level, games, and you could argue healthy games or not healthy, anything, it feels like different children when they're exposed to screens. Now, again, we still do some screens. We still watch some movies. We've still played some video games and Apple Arcade. But there are nuances here. And if you pay attention as a parent, you'll see the difference. But it's important to go in and out of flow here. Like we did no screen summer last year, screen-free summer. And we did that, literally road trips, hundreds of miles on the road. But even during screen-free summer, we had no devices, no iPads, no games, no nothing. And we talked and we listened to music and we did other things. They were kicking and screaming for the first couple of days, but then I found that Tiger read like crazy. And there's so many benefits that can come from this experiment, if you will. And that's my invite, right? Do the experiment. Take them out for a while, try different amounts, different ways that you can involve screens in your family, but experiment and don't just follow the crowd always.
Yeah. Yeah. And I told Sophie that the other day. I said, hey, and you and I agreed, like the fact that Sophie and Tiger are best friends. And so the fact that we're like getting on the same page with parenting or we're on the same page is really helpful because I can be like,
very
hey,
helpful.
Tiger doesn't have a phone either, right? So if you're listening, like find that one, one friend that doesn't have a phone for their kids. And then, we talked about, I was searching online for what options there were for kids. And I found this phone. It's Gabb Wireless, GABB. This isn't an endorsement. I know nothing about it, except that it looks like an iPhone. Right. But you can't download apps. You can't surf the web. You can call, you can video, right? You can text, so basically you can communicate. And then the only apps are like the camera, that kind of thing. Right. But that's the kind of thing that I'm leaning towards, that whenever we do finally do a phone, because she needs to get a hold of us, that's what she can do.
One more thing I want to say to this too is that I do want to say that I'm trying my best to refrain from any type of judgment or what
That's a good point.
seem like that in my tone. I know you're the same way.
Yeah.
Because look, there are parents out there that all different unique situations. A sick child that's in the hospital, and they might say, well, I'm going to let them do this because it's the only thing they can do.
Yeah.
I just want to say that there's 1,000 scenarios. And you have to do what's right for your family. I know that we align on this. This is just where we are and what we want to do. But one last thing I wanted to say is that we talk about like locking arms with other people. Ocean had a play date the other day, a kid he hadn't seen in a while, came over to the house. And after an hour of that kid being here, and we do no screens, that he really wanted to go home because he was so upset that Ocean didn't have video games.
Wow.
And he was like, and Tatiana and I just sat down. We're like, he did not have the ability to play, to build, to create, to imagine, which are the things that I want Ocean to have. And trust me, he whines and complains. Ocean whines and complains. And if I'm not strong, I will break down and just give it to him. Right.
Yeah.
But it was just wild for me to see that. The kid literally couldn't play because he's like, you don't have video games. I want to go home and play video games. And I was heartbroken by it. Anyway.
And Ocean is 7. I'm assuming he's a friend, similar age?
Yeah, similar age. Yep.
Yeah. That's hard.
Because it's the imagination piece. I'm not opposed to like healthy games like Minecraft or, the bonding that you can do with your kids over a healthy game, if you will, or the hand-eye coordination or the problem solving or the whatever. Those are all good points. But if they can't develop their imagination, if they can't create on their own, if they're living in somebody else's fantasy world constantly, then they won't develop that skill of making their own fantasy world that they can step into and live.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I want to take a minute to talk with you about the Brotherhood, a group of men that I have the privilege of connecting with every day. These are the men that help me stay focused on being a family man with a business, not a businessman that happens to have a family. And throughout the year, we have deep conversations, real conversations, and share the best resources around 6 areas of life: thriving marriages, intentional parenting, vibrant health, emotional intelligence, business evolution, and wealth and legacy. Here's what one of our members has to say about their experience.
I want to recognize everyone that really made the commitment and the decision and gave themselves the permission to fully show up and just share. I think all the speakers obviously were awesome, amazing content, but I think the real magic comes from everyone else speaking their minds and sharing what they're feeling, what's connecting and resonating with them. And I think it's a little comments that you might not realize that you say that's going to stick with someone else and really make a lasting impression.
Look, guys, the time is now to pour into your family. I read an article by Tim Urban that rocked me to put everything into perspective. He said that 93% of the time that he, as a child, would ever spend with his mom and dad, by his calculations, happened before the age of 18. 93% of the time he'd ever spend with mom and dad happened before the age of 18. I feel confident that saying that no matter how old your kids are right now, the time is to go all in on your family. In the Brotherhood, we have members with kids that are newborns, and we have guys whose kids are grown adults. It's never too late to be a great parent, and the journey never ends. No matter how great you are at fatherhood, and you might be the best out there maybe, or marriage, or juggling work and family life, this community can help you be better. If you're ready to take the next step, go to frontrowdads.com and click Join the Brotherhood.
Yeah, and thank you so much for addressing that. I do realize that I was I was talking about I was reliving our conversation the other day of why we don't want our kids to have phones, but I realized that probably 80% of people listening, your kid has a phone, right? And that it's not that there's a wrong or a right. It's being aware of what are the consequences of the choices that we make or allow for our children. And I do recommend anybody listening does read that book, Glow Kids. If getting a phone for your kids or your kids already have a phone, if that's part of their world, I feel like as parents, we owe ourselves to be learning and growing and educating ourselves on what are the effects of this choice that I made, right? And might I need to adjust it or reverse it? Something along those lines. And our kids, to be fair, that we do they get 1 hour of video game time, and it's usually Minecraft. 1 hour on Saturday, 1 hour on Friday, and 1 hour on Saturday. That's the limit to their screen time. And, they fought us on that, especially because we actually had more than that before. And then we went down to that. And that's the hardest, is to go backwards, right?
Backwards.
But we did. And we actually did what you did. We modeled a screen-free summer last summer. And then it was much easier to we went from too much video games to no video games. And then we were able to back into 1 hour on the weekends. But again, most of their friends get like, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, 7 days a week kind of thing. But I always encourage our kids, I go, hey, you're leaders, right? Like, it's okay. Like, instead of them feeling like I'm the only one without a phone, go, well, that makes you a leader, right? So just a nice spin on, on the not having a phone. So let's talk about, I would just love to dive into kind of what, based on what you've been learning from Front Row Dads and what I've learned, what are the best strategies that you've learned on really three things? Number one is overall family, right? Like how to prioritize, how to keep the focus on the family. So just the overall family dynamic, how to thrive there, how to win there. And then if there's anything specific, the second category would be marriage. So anything specific for marriage that you've either it's working for you or that you're trying to make work for you. And then parenting, right? That's the third. So overall family, how to keep family a priority, whether it's around scheduling, prioritizing, whatever that is. Number two, marriage. And number three, parenting. And I'm happy to, we can go back and forth and kind of share what we've learned, what's working for us.
Yeah. So with family, and I'll just go really high level. And if you want to go into any of these,
yeah.
Actually, if it's cool, let me actually share like a little seed for each one of these. And then you can choose your own adventure here, Hal, of where we want to spend a little more time.
Yeah.
With family, I think you nailed it in the beginning. I think it's understanding your family values. What do you want to stand for? I think when it comes to family, it's traditions and rituals. It's understanding what are the things you want to do regularly. Do you want to have a regular family vacation? Do you want to regularly make pancakes on Saturday? Do you want to regularly say a prayer at dinner at night? Do you want to regularly, right? Like, what are the traditions? What are the consistencies in your life? And what is okay to not be consistent? Just because another family goes to the same vacation spot every year and there's benefits to doing that, your family might decide to go somewhere new every year and they'll get a whole other benefit of variety. But it's really taking a step back and having a moment to ask yourself, what is important to your family? Because if everything's important, nothing's important, right? And there's 100 values that you could argue are all really important, but which core three values, or as an example, is your family going to focus on, right? One of our core values as a family is nourishment. We call that feel the beat, right? It's like the play on the word, the beats, it's like the beat of music, but also the beats that we eat, right? It's the food that comes from the ground. It's what's grounded in our lives and eating natural organic foods. Nourishment is one of our values. So we know that. Is integrity a value? Sure. It's not one of our core three, but do I want my kids to have it? Definitely, right? So that's what I would say for family. Know what your family stands for. When it comes to marriage, the thing I would say about this one is that, and this came up recently, and we could talk about this story if you want to also, is I asked Tatiana for 5% more in a particular story. And I'm going to leave out details just for time. I said, I'm asking for 5% more. And she came back with something so brilliant. She said, maybe you could start by asking, how could you give yourself 5% more? And then that led me to share something today that you may or may not have seen. But I said, when you show up to your marriage, one of the things that I'm learning is how to source approval and love from within. So I'm not constantly going to the other person to say, would you tell me I'm great so that I feel good? Would you tell me that everything's okay so I can feel security, right? Or whatever it might be. We all want approval, control, and security, but a lot of times we source too much of that from our spouse. So what I've seen is that men and women who learn to source that from within, right? Or from nature or from other spaces, they're not constantly leaning on their spouse, the weight of leaning on them to get something from them, which can become very tiring for a spouse to deal with. Somebody's emotions, like they don't know what to do with them, so they just dump them on their spouse, right? Versus figuring out a way to take care of yourself for your spouse. And then when it comes to parenting, we just put out the dad quiz, and this was helping men identify blind spots. And what we've learned in Front Row Dads in our community, which is now coming up on 300 members, 15 different countries, and we've been at it for 6 years, we'd have to be asleep at the wheel to not see some patterns. And what we noticed was that there were really 5 buckets or 5 areas where parents, and this same applies to women as men. It just happens to be that we sourced it from our community. And that is that people are often struggling either when it comes to being a great parent with time. They're just so busy with their commitments. And whether you're digging in the garden or doing work or something, whatever work you're doing in your life, that you just don't have the time for your kids. That may be a blind spot for you. That might be the biggest area of growth. The second one would be focus. So you're with your kids, but you're on your phone. You're checking messages. You're doing something else. You're buying something on Amazon. You're, whatever. And you can be like, it's for the family, right? I did it a million times. Like, I'm with my family, but you're distracted is really what you are. The third one is about emotional stability, emotional intelligence, EQ. And this is about, are you one that just flies off the handle, like get in the car, because you just get pushed to the edge sometimes. So you might be, the unpredictable parent. And then the next one is, hope and optimism. It's about sometimes you're just getting beat down. And so a blind spot for some parents is attitude. It's that they got so much going on. They got 3 kids under 5 and a business and a church and all these things. And at the end of the day, they just hit their head on the pillow. Like, I'm just getting my ass kicked everywhere. Yeah. And they feel defeated. And then the last one is about connection. So you're with your kids and you're not on your phone, but it's like they want to play Lego and you don't, and you just haven't found the thing, or you're a sports person and they're in theater and you just can't connect. You ask your 12-year-old, how was your day at school? And they're like, fine. And you're like, how do I get more information? So when it comes to those 3 categories, those are my high-level highlights. You can take that wherever you want.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I think you just gave a little, 5-minute masterclass. That's super helpful. I'll do the same thing with family. First and foremost, one little simple hack that anybody listening can immediately model is to have to read a parenting book, create a self-imposed rule. This is what I've done. It's been very helpful. I'm an entrepreneur and a business owner, so I'm always excited about the next book I'm reading on how to grow the business, on how to, be better, more productive, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been probably a year ago, maybe more, but I made it a rule that I am not allowed to read a business book until I read a book on family. So on parenting or marriage. And what that does, a few things. Number one is it reminds me every morning, oh yeah, family is my highest priority. I can't even get into business until I've grown as a husband and I've grown as a father. So that's the first thing. It just keeps that it just reminds me every single morning to start the day, this is my highest priority. And number two, it ensures that I'm evolving as a husband and as a father each and every single day. The book I'm rereading right now is Hold On to Your Kids. Again, highly recommended. I'll actually quote something from that in a second when I get to the parenting topic. But yeah, so every morning, right, I'm reading my business book that I'm reading right now is called How to Get Everything You Can Out of All You've Got by Jay Abraham. And I love that book and I can't wait to get into it every morning. But sitting on top of it every morning is, oh yeah, I've got to read Hold On to Your Kids first. And then the next book I'm reading is called Untangled, and it's specific to raising a daughter. My daughter's 12 going on 17. And so that's the next book I'm diving into. But so that's one thing I'd share for anybody and everybody, right? Super simple. Just read a family book first thing in the morning before you get to whatever other book you're reading. And that ensures you continue to evolve in those crucial roles. As far as marriage goes, I read a book many years ago. I think it was like the 7 Principles of a Successful Marriage. But it was, of being a great husband, because it was for men specifically. But it talked about, think of it as your job. Think of marriage as a job. It says, I know this is taking a little bit of the romance out of it, but how do you approach your job? And anybody listening, what if you were hired to be a spouse, right? I want you to think about this context for a second. What if you were hired? And what if you only kept your job based on your job performance? What if you were paid a very high salary, like $1 million a year, to be the best spouse on the planet? Would you show up then the same way that you do now? Like, I think about, for me as a husband, empathy is big for my wife, right? And for me, it's only big if I really, really make it a priority. But if I was paid $1 million a year to be the husband that she needed, well, I would be so freaking empathetic because I was trying to excel at my work. And this book, when it gave that paradigm, it's like men learn all these strategies and stuff because they, to thrive in business or work. And we all do that in certain areas of our life. And then we often just kind of let marriage happen, or we become reactive. Like we're not intentional, we're not strategic, we're not thoughtful, we're just reactive, and we're keeping score. Oh, you were mean to me today, I'm mean to you today. Oh, you were nice, okay, I'll be nice. How about if you just decide, this is who I am, I'm committed to being the best spouse on the planet, and it doesn't matter how my spouse acts on any given day. It doesn't change who I'm committed to being and how I'm committed to showing up. So that's the best tip I've learned on parenting is think of it like your job, or I'm sorry, on marriage. Think of it like your job. Think about that you're paid a very high salary to be the best spouse you could possibly be for your spouse, regardless of how they treat you in any given moment, the mood that they're in, et cetera, whether or not they took out the trash, right, et cetera. Just you commit to who you're committed to being. And then as far as parenting goes, and this comes from the book, Hold On to Your Kids, which is why it's top of mind, it's to prioritize the relationship with your child above correcting behavior. Most of us, we're constantly correcting behavior. You should do this, you shouldn't do that, you're in trouble for this, you're grounded for that. And we do that more often than not at the expense of the relationship, right? When you yell at your child, you're rarely creating a stronger bond, which would then give you more influence. In fact, you are diminishing your influence by reacting out of emotion or out of anger. And so Hold On to Your Kids, I printed that, I wrote that paragraph out when I first read it, and it's been on our fridge for like 2 years. And it's something along the lines of like, always prioritize the relationship with your child above correcting their behavior. And so that has been an absolute game changer. And often when I go, I have to bite my tongue, but because I have to go, okay, what's more important right now? The relationship with my daughter or my son, right? Or, catching them doing something wrong. And, 9.9 times out of 10, it's the relationship. And of course, occasionally, you got to call out behavior, but you can do it in a way, right? Think about that. If your priority is preserving and nurturing the relationship, then you're going to discipline them very differently than if you're just focused on correcting the behavior and you're justified in getting short-term compliance. It worked. I threatened to take something away and they did what I asked them to. Victory. Well, it's like, how do they feel about you? Maybe that short-lived victory is actually creating long-term detriment to the quality of your relationship and your ability to raise, influence, and nurture that child. So yeah, those are the three biggest lessons that I've been learning in my family life that have been really impactful.
Yeah, those are good. And this reminds me of so many of the conversations we have inside Front Row Dads, inside what we call the brotherhood, right? When we are on monthly calls or on these summits that we do every 8 weeks, these online events or our in-person retreats or conferences. The idea is to source ideas, different ways of looking at things, different perspectives. Like, hey, you could look at it this way, you could look at it that way. And then ultimately choose the path that's most in alignment with your core values and how you want to do parenting. Because there's a lot of ways to do all these things. But I'm going to walk away as a great example today, thinking about my relationship with my kids. That's going to be the question I want to take away today, is just to say, how is my relationship with Tiger? Because I remember there was a moment with my dad when I was younger where he drew a boundary, right? Like he drew a line, and I can argue right now both that was healthy and unhealthy. I can see both sides of it. The way he drew that boundary, and I can tell you what it was, by the way. It was a moment where I had said to my mom something really smart. I was a jerk to my mom. And I think it was something to along the lines of like, what do you want me to do? Kiss your butt. It was like, well, you can't do that. I was like, what do you want me to do? Like kiss your butt? And it was something really disrespectful.
I bet you said ass, John. I bet you said ass.
My dad came up to my bathroom and he came up to and was fuming. And I opened the door and he was standing there and had the most intense look in his eyes. And he picked up his fist like he was going to hit me, like he was going to punch me. Now I'm 15, by the way, 16, somewhere in that neighborhood. And he looked like he was going to punch me. And he said, don't ever talk to my wife that way ever again.
Wow.
He didn't say your mom.
Yeah.
He said my wife. I was like, and for the record, I didn't. Like, I don't think I spoke those words ever again because he drew a line and it was very clear where that line was. Now, on one hand, I'm so grateful that he drew that line. And I really am looking back now as a 46-year-old man. I'm glad that he stood up for his wife. I'm glad that he came up to me and with such power presented the boundary, right? That this is not what you're going to do. On the other hand, there was a moment of that I do feel like fractured our relationship. And maybe that could have been, I don't know, because I don't recall all the nuances of that time period. Maybe he did come and apologize for raising his fist, or maybe but I held on to the story. And I do feel that it fractured our relationship in that moment. Now, I'm not blaming him. This isn't a bashing my dad moment.
Sure.
My dad's a great guy. And I've done things that I could see either are going to be like, hey, I'm glad my dad did that, or I'm still working on that in therapy for my kids later on in their life. I can see those moments. But I just wanted to say that there is a fine line there. And I have a lot of respect for parents trying to figure out how to get compliance so that you can actually do things during the day, and all the tools and strategies from taking stuff away and punishment and timeouts and all those things, and maintaining a relationship is so difficult to balance all those things. But again, that's why Front Row Dads exists, because people always say there is no manual for parenting. And it's like, we're actually trying to create one.
Yeah.
And we're trying to create exactly just that, a manual where it's like, here's the strategies, here are the ideas, here are the consequences from doing things these different ways so that we can make better decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to go into that. Now is a good time, I think, for anybody listening. If you are a dad, or you are a mom with, that knows a dad, right? If you are a dad, or a dad, we're going to do a Front Row Dads webinar. We do this once a year around Father's Day on June 15th at 11 a.m. Central Time. So June 15th at 11 a.m. Central Time, and you can register right now. It's totally free, but we're going to it'll be much more structured than today's, back and forth conversation, but really teaching the best of the best strategies to thrive as a husband and thrive as a dad. And that is at frontrowdads.com/Hal, HAL. That's where you can register. So again, frontrowdads.com/Hal. There will probably be a few hundred dads on there sharing great ideas. I invite everybody. Really, really, really important. If you're a dad, that you are there. And that's one of the biggest things, John, is I feel like with Front Row, once you started Front Row Dads, our conversations are now more about parenting and being a husband than they are about business, which is really, really cool, because it was never that way. And I know very few men. In fact, there's a joke. I think the comedian Rob Riggle, he has a joke where he said, I was on the phone the other day with my best friend. We've known each other our whole lives. He was the best man in my wedding. I was the best man in his wedding. I was there when his kids were born. He was there when my kids were born. And we talked for 3 hours the other day. We hadn't talked in, months, and we were catching up. And we got off the phone, and my wife came in and she goes, hey, so wow, you guys, a 3-hour call. That was a long one. So how's Kathy doing? His wife. And he said, I don't know. 3 hours? You don't ask about Kathy? He goes, no. Well, how are the kids? I don't know. Right? And Rob's saying this, but it's like men across, any man watching the comedy specials, like, totally get it. I could be on the phone with my friend for an hour, and we talk about, sports and business and some crazy things that happened since we last spoke. And we literally leave family out, and John, I just honor you as the leader of Front Row Dads and creating that group. I've said it for years. It's the best group I've ever been a part of. And why? I mean, there's lots of reasons. It's the bonding's amazing. The vulnerability is amazing. But at the end of the day, it's the outcomes. It's that I'm a better husband because I'm part of Front Row Dads. I'm a better father because I'm part of Front Row Dads. I'm even a better friend because I'm part of Front Row Dads and the kind of the culture, the brotherhood that you've created, man. So anybody listening, frontrowdads.com/Hal. I highly encourage you to be there. And John, I want to share one more sentiment before we wrap up. But anything else to share on the webinar or anything at all?
No, I want to thank you for always engaging in these conversations, because it is one thing to talk about it, but when you look at your calendar today, it included this interview, and it included us talking about family strategies, and we're talking about real life moments that have happened just for us in the last couple of days, and also, reminders of who we want to be going forward. So thanks for that. Even before we clicked record, man, I I said to you, and I'm telling everybody now, I said, hey, before you hit record, I just want to let you know, I love you. I'm so grateful that we get these moments together to be able to do these things. And so I really feel that way. So thank you, man. I'm looking forward to meeting your audience, your community, because people that attend, and we've done this before, with people that attend this webinar, this training, this conversation that we're about to have June 15th, and they are some of the greatest people because they understand what it means to learn and grow and to work on themselves. And for the dads in your community that find their way into Front Row Dads, you are our number one team builder. Like, you've literally brought in some of the most amazing and the most number of people in the Front Row Dads of all of our 300 members. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, it's constantly whenever I'm, I'll get interviewed by on a podcast and I text after, hey, you heard of Front Row Dads? Like, it's the best group, so.
Levesque's house this weekend when we were at his place at this pool party with all these Front Row Dads, and his wife goes, how did you find Front Row Dads? And he goes, Hal Elrod. Like, he reached out. He's like, and it was 5 years ago that he joined a retreat, and now he's hosting events for Front Row Dads at his house. Yeah. It's really cool, man.
Yeah, no, that is really cool. That was really cool. I wanted to share just one more thing. This came up at our Front Row Dads band meeting the other day, and you asked me to share it in the group. And I actually just realized I haven't yet, but it's on my to-do list. But I'll share it now. So if you're listening to this, I know that for me, when I learn new ideas, new strategies, it often makes me feel bad, right? I feel like I'm messing up. I'm not doing these things. I wish I would have known. Man, what a great strategy idea! I wish I would have known that 10 years ago. It would have been a different journey, right? And I want to close out today by saying, be at peace with where you are. Give yourself grace. One of the things that I realized the other day was my dad and I have an incredible relationship, right? I'm 42, about to be 43 in a few days. He is 66-ish, I think. But we have an incredible relationship, incredible bond. No day would go by when I wouldn't say he is the best dad I could ever imagined. And here's what I realized. He didn't read any parenting books. He didn't, I'm always like, there's all these I got to follow the strategies. No, he didn't have any strategies. He just loved me unconditionally and supported me unconditionally. And that's it. And I just want to close by saying that, if you're a parent, love your kids unconditionally, support them in being the best version of who they are, and give yourself grace for all the mistakes that we're all going to keep making along the way. And again, granted, being a part of Front Row Dads helps me, I feel like, make less mistakes and have more intentionality around parenting. But yeah, brother. Well, I'm grateful to be able to do these conversations with you and share with our listeners. And again, if you are a dad and you want to attend, frontrowdads.com/Hal is that June 15th webinar. And we're going to go deeper and more structured into all of these topics on parenting, marriage, and family as a whole. Anything else, buddy?
Well, I just wanted to tell your audience as well that if they want to be able to hang in person with you or hear you live, that we're December 2nd through the 4th in Austin, Texas, we're hosting our first ever large event, if you will call it, because we've done retreats of 50 people for the last 6 years, but we've never had an event where there could be a couple hundred people there, members of Front Row Dads or people that just heard about Front Row Dads. But if you are a dad and you're interested in growing in your role as a father, as a husband, you want to win at home and win at work, then this is an event that you're going to enjoy. And Hal is going to be speaking there along with other friends of ours. I'll save some of those for surprises, but Preston Smiles will be there along with some other incredible people. But thank you, Hal, for being at that event. And I hope to meet some of your community there.
I'm excited for that. I totally had forgotten about that, but I'm really excited. Yeah, it's going to be fun. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Again, the webinar, frontrowdads.com/Hal. Grab a spot. Love to see you there. It's going to be very interactive. And yeah, goal achievers, members of the Miracle Morning community, I love you. I appreciate you. And I will talk to y'all next week.
Gentlemen, thanks for listening to the show today. 2 actions to take from here. First, implement one thing that you learned from the interview. And number 2, share this episode with somebody who values being a family man with a business. If you're enjoying the Front Row Dad podcast, the biggest thanks we ever get are honest reviews. So thank you for your feedback in advance. We read all of them. And if you want to learn more about the Brotherhood, which is our private community of 200 men from 6 different countries. Visit frontrowdads.com for more info. If you're wondering what the hell the Brotherhood is all about, I'll leave you with some real feedback from guys who are active members and why they are part of our crew. Thanks again for listening to the show, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
You had this passion for wanting to find a way to make you a better parent and a better husband, just better in general. And so you developed this community of like-minded men that aspire to be better and aspire to put family first and business second. And so to me, there's no greater place I'd rather be. You know, people ask me all the time, like, if I could only pick one group, mastermind, organization, whatever to be part of besides my own, it's always yours. And that's it. And by the way, part of that has to do with you and the leader you are and the way that you treat people and how you show up and the level of preparation that you have and the quality and amount of value that you offer. And then part of it's in the community that's been assembled and these unbelievable like-minded men that show up willing and ready to serve and to give and to share. And so to me, there's no better place that I can be spending my time. I look at 2 different things that we can be doing with our time. One of them is growing relationships and starting first with the most important relationships. And the other one is growing our financial acumen and our wealth to be able to do the things that we want to do and have impact and be able to spend time with the people that we value most by buying that time back. So to me, what you do and what I do is a great marriage of what I think is most important. And I would also throw in there that health is, you know, the other component of that. And I feel like the community that you've built, that each of us have built, is also centered around that, because you talk about being a great husband, parent, that's going to come from taking care of yourself and making sure that you have the energy to be able to serve. And I do the same thing on a wealth standpoint, because wealth to me is not just about money. It's actually about having the time and the space to have your personal health. I would take having great health over no money any day of the week, rather than the inverse of that, having a lot of money but no health. So to me, those are like the 3 most important components. And to me, we're always merging those 3 in the things that we each do. And so I think that's why there's a lot of crossover of, you know, members. That's why what you do resonates so much with me. What I do resonates so much with you. I joined as a lifetime member for that small little window where you offered it. I'm like, I'm in, because I know if I'm going to commit my time anywhere, this is it, because it makes me a better man, makes me a better husband, makes me a better father. It encourages me to really step up my peer group with other like-minded men so that I can be on mission, on point with other people that will hold me accountable at the highest level.
John and I met a year and a half ago with the launch of my first book. And as we were going through the interview, I began to ask him questions about the Brotherhood, and it resonated within me that a community of like-minded, like-hearted men that wanted to win, as he was just saying, at business and in life. And I'd reverse that. I want to win as a dad, and then I'd also love to be successful in business, because I feel like if I don't get the dad right, who cares what I did in business? That's my legacy. That's what lives beyond me. So to tribe up with a bunch of dudes going in the same direction with the pillars that are in place and the way that not only are you encouraged, compelled, you're chided, you're laughed with, but you get to pace yourself, but you can get around a band of dudes that you can trust, you can share with, you can grow with. And just recently completed a time with these guys. We did this fast at the start of the new year. Every day I would tune in to the little app where we were sharing comments, and I was so impressed how you could see guys that were further down the road and things like this, guys that were just starting, and the camaraderie, the encouragement. So for myself, this was a total fit, and I would encourage any dude that's looking for a place where you can feel connected with a band of guys wanting to go in the same direction. Front Row Dads is for you.